group. I'm the director of support and client success. And then I have with me Jake here. Jake Miller, he's a client services consultant and he does project management and implementation and support, largely for Engaging Networks clients, but also for other platforms. Okay, so we have a small group, so we'll just make this very interactive. So if you have a question or want to know something more or are like, okay, that's boring, skip that one, you know, it's all good. We'll move right through. Just to introduce Zuri Group, I mean, most people maybe already know, but we are a full-service consulting company. We do technology consulting as well as strategic services. And we also partnered with Engaging Networks to build the peer-to-peer tool on the platform. So we have lots of expertise in peer-to-peer. Okay, so what we're going to cover here today is I'm going to give kind of an overview analysis of sort of generations in general, and then we'll talk about charitable giving trends by generations, and we have some data from the most recent Blackbaud study that are interesting to talk about. And then also talk about the differences and similarities between the generations, because there are quite a few similarities, and then there are some diverging paths that are important to note. And then talk a little bit about peer-to-peer fundraising and how it's kind of a cross-generational tool. And then some strategies to cut through the communication clutter and actually reach those different generations. So first of all, let me get a show of hands. Do we have any baby boomers in the audience? I don't think we do. Okay, how about Generation X, Gen X? Okay, probably. We'll look at the time ranges and you can see which one you fall into. And then Millennials? Jake's a millennial too. Okay, well, Millennials, you get a gold star for participating. Exactly, and that was something I was going to, kind of talk about. That, there's so much gray area, and which one are you, Mon? Do you know?
When does Millennials start?
Well, so Millennials. It's like either it just depends on what source you look at. It can be anywhere from 80 to 84. So yeah. So and that's actually the thing. Like, what is a generation, right? It's not actually just a time range. It's not like these exact 20 years make a generation. There's an outfit out of Houston called the Center for Kinetic Study of Generations or something like that, and this is all they do all day long is study generations. And their definition of generations, which I like better, is that it's not a strict date range, it's actually shared experiences. So this it's more like a sociological definition versus a time-based. But it does have, within an observable time frame. So here's a chart for you. I wouldn't, I think greatest generation, you can pretty much say, yes, the cutoff is 46. Baby boomers, this is pretty firm. Gen X, this is where it starts getting a little sketchy. This says to 1984. Generation Y, don't worry about it, it's fake. Although some people will say there's a Gen Y, like Y1 and Y2, and that actually replaces the millennials, but it is far more commonly accepted that Millennials is the name of this generation. And this definition is 1982, but obviously there's some crossover here. Some people have it starting at 80, so it's kind of more what you identify with more so. So just talking about the, what are those areas that people identify with? So to start off with the greatest generation, also called silent generation or maturers, those are the people who were alive during World War II and either were children and their parents fought and died in the war, or they actually were the people that were in the war. And most of them also remember the Great Depression or were raised by people who remember the Great Depression. So there was this, so they're very much savers, right? That's sort of the shared experience of that generation. And then with the baby boomers, those are the ones that were born after the war. So, the soldiers came home from the war. There was this big boom in childbirth. And so there's this large generation after that. And their shared experiences are that they're sort of building the country back up, right? So they're like the hard workers, and that life was hard, and we had to sort of dig out from the war and dig out from the Great Depression. So that's kind of their shared experience. And then you get to Generation X, and we were considered kind of the slackers after these baby boomers are such hard workers. And it's kind of like the MTV generation. We witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. So I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, I remember doing like bomb drills, where you had to like hide under the desks, like that was gonna do anything. But anyway, so, I don't think the kids today are, maybe they're doing earthquake or fire drills, but I'm pretty sure they're not doing nuclear war drills, because, that ended during our generation. And yeah, right. Okay, yeah, that's sad, but true. That's probably, Gen Z. I don't know, would that fall under millennials? Did you ever have any school shootings while you were still in school? Okay, yeah, so that's a Gen Z thing. Your kids have shooting drills. Yeah, wow.
We had anthrax drills.
Really?
And then bomb drills, and then someone put a note for an anthrax bomb, which with anthrax you are not allowed to leave the building. With bombs you have to leave the building. So the administration got really confused when it said it was an anthrax bomb. So they put us all on a bus and moved us to another building.
Oh my gosh.
That was
Wow.
another drill. That one was real.
That one was real.
There were others where there were drills preparing for that, and then someone combined them.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay. Well, yeah. So there you go. There's another subset of that kind of shared experience, and then Gen X also is the first generation to interact with technology in like early adulthood, right? So baby boomers and matures are, the internet or cell phones came out when they were in their late adulthood, like, 50s, 60s. I shouldn't say that late. That sounds, I'm aging myself there. But anyway, so it's, that interaction with technology in Gen X, we've mostly tried to keep up, but we're not, it's not native to us. And then in Gen Y, we're ignoring that because it's fake. So let's talk about the millennials. So now the millennials are the first generation that actually grew up with technology. But not all of them, this range here, right? So if we're looking at 2004, not all of them in 1984 clearly, or 82, were not, automatically raised with, you hand them an iPad when they're 2 years old, right? To keep them busy. So there are actually millennials out there that are not tech savvy, and while they're tech dependent, they're not always tech native. So like Gen Z is tech native. These are the kids that have had a screen in their hand since they were babies. Millennials are kind of in the middle of that. So most remember the days of analog and, before cell phones, before the internet. And then also now most are very tech savvy and sort of on their phones and, screens all the time. And millennials' number one way to communicate is text messaging, and then number two is email. And then the other interesting thing about millennials is that there is this now dichotomy. So, when you were like, Brittany, right? Yeah, when you were like, oh, a millennial, that is classic to this dichotomy that as the millennials are getting older, they're kind of self-selecting into two groups. So one group is like right around age 30. One group is kind of like, okay, we're gonna grow up and we're gonna, get a job and have kids and, do all the things that adults do. And then the other half of the millennials are still like, wearing baggy pants and living in their parents' basements and not really making any real traction in the world. And then, compounding that, or, sort of in addition to that, millennials are typically entering the workplace up to 5 years later than previous generations. So, when I had my first job, my, sort of first career job, I was 23. And then when I hired Jake a couple years ago, for his first real job, he was 27. And so there's a couple factors there. The baby boomers are typically the parents of the millennials. And so, they had it hard and they were working to rebuild. And so they had this mindset of, I want to make my kids' life easier than mine. So that's great, mission accomplished, but it's also kind of coming back to bite us a little bit. Because millennials now are like, oh, I got they got all the participation awards for, for just showing up to soccer practice. Or, the parents say, oh, we'll keep supporting you if you stay in school. As long as you're in college, we'll keep supporting you. So then they're taking 7 years to get through college. So things like that. Now, Jake pointed out to me yesterday that another reason why millennials are staying in school longer is because the playing field is kind of leveled out if you have a bachelor's degree. That isn't necessarily a differentiator. Like it kind of was for my generation, but now it's kind of like, well, that's the minimum requirement. If you want to differentiate yourself, you've got to have an advanced degree. So that's another reason they're staying in school longer. So I thought that was an interesting point. So kind of an interesting dichotomy there, and important to note which people you're targeting for which reasons. And then as far as Generation Z goes, or the iGen, these are the kids that are teenagers or all the way through babies today. There's some discrepancy again here when Generation Z starts. So. Some say as early as 1995 and up through 2002, but there isn't really any indication of what the next generation is yet, so it's kind of everybody in that, kid to teen group. So now this group is tech native, is knows how things work inherently, and they're changing the world. So they're the ones that are actually innovating things that you wouldn't even think to innovate. And so these are the ones that are, I think, these are the ones to kind of watch out for. They're not in the, they're not in the workplace yet, but they're definitely making changes. And, starting their own nonprofits at age 12 because they can get a hold of a GoFundMe account or, whatever. So it's kind of mind-boggling. In fact, a friend of mine was just telling me a story about his 9-year-old son who taught himself how to play piano in 6 weeks by just Googling, watching YouTube videos. He figured out the notes. He put the numbers of the notes on the keyboard and then watched a few more videos and then taught himself how to play 4 songs. So, these kids are, they're doing things that we would not even have imagined we could do. So a couple other observations about generations in general. They are compressing. So whereas the older generations, you could kind of say, 20 years, 20 years, 20 years, there's research that's showing that because of the rate of change of technology, and because really generations are based on shared experiences, and now our technological experiences are largely going to drive what is considered shared experiences, at least in North America, that the time range of these generations is going to compress. And so potentially, right now we have 5 generations in the world, but in 20 years we could have 7, or in 50 years we could have 10. And so there's kind of some unknowns there, but that rate of change is going to speed up. And then the other thing that's interesting to note is that even though you may be thinking, okay, well, I don't have to worry about the iGen as far as how to market to them or whatever, because they're not in the workforce yet, they don't have any money, except that they're bringing the older generations along with them. So for example, let's say Jake and his wife had a baby, and they wanted, and Jake's parents were like, hey, send me your baby pictures, I want to see my grandbaby. And Jake's like, oh yeah, we posted them on Facebook. So now Jake's parents, who aren't on Facebook, have to go join Facebook to see pictures of the grandkids. So now those people are getting into Facebook, and now Facebook isn't cool anymore. So my parents are on Facebook now, and every time I go on a trip with them, they're like, post this on Facebook for me. So it's interesting how the younger generations were the early adopters of it, and then they brought the older generations in order to, sort of keep up with them or interact with them or, see pictures of their grandkids. And so, things are evolving. Now all the kids are on Instagram or, something else. So anyway, and just that last point, just to, sort of make that, really drive that point home, that Gen Z is going to change the world. So we can watch them for what to do and then do some testing and then see how it affects the other generations, see how quickly they adapt and conform, and then, kind of follow them along the way. And really, the key is finding them where they are. And I think the last two presentations ago, he said something about, assumptions being kind of the worst mistake. So we can not assume that we know anything about where these people are and just keep asking and testing and, adapting and trying to find them where they are. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jake, and he's going to talk about now actually, some data we've looked at from the Blackbaud study and the trends and how we can move forward from there.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Hi, everyone. My name's Jacob Miller. I'm a millennial. I sincerely apologize on behalf of my other half, the baggy pants brethren. So anyways, all right, so we're going to kind of dig into some of the statistics and look at how that kind of differentiates based on the generation and how we can maybe target these people based on their shared experiences. So charitable giving trends by generation. Obviously, the greatest generation, right? They give most per capita. There's not very many of them left. That's sad because they are the greatest. But yes, that is my grandma there, and she gives very generously. And so that's the nice thing about these elderly generations. They give a lot of money for each person, so that's awesome. Baby boomers, they give the greatest amount, right? So it's 41% of the total. They are the biggest generation, so it's a good one to keep targeting for like 5 or more years. It kind of merges into Gen X. They're the next one. They're about 10 years out. And so these people are what you really want to be looking at currently. How you strategize and set up your marketing. These are the people you're looking at probably the most. Let's see here. Millennials, my generation, we're doing pretty good, 14%. That's not bad. We could do a little better. Come on, guys. But we have to get out of our parents' basement first before we can really start making some money. The Gen Zers, so obviously they're like 12 years old, right? So they're only given about 2%. But $2, yeah, that sounds about right. But think about it. Have you ever heard of Twitch? Okay, so this is crazy because I'm on Twitch quite a bit, and these, 10, 12-year-olds, they're just donating like crazy to their favorite streamers, their video game, people. I mean, it's daddy's dollars that they're donating, but the fact is, they kind of understand this concept of, wow, I like this, what they're doing, here's some money. So that's kind of something that we can look at in the future. How do we transition them to giving to something that's a cause, that's something that's, impactful on the world and not just a video game? But so that's something to keep in mind. The current trend is, as you see here, fewer Americans are giving as a whole, but the dollar amounts are rising. So why is that? It's the income gap that's increasing. We've had a huge middle class for years. That's starting to disappear. So donor retention is going to become very, very important. And so that's what we're driving home. How do we target these generations so that they want to be continuous donors, right? Not just in 1 year. I think the fall off is it's 25 to 31% stop donating after the first year. So that's sad. We need to change it. Let's talk about some ways we can do it. All right, so how do people give, right? In what avenues do they participate in our, our campaigns, the things we have going on? Here's how it's kind of split up. You see it's kind of like a step ladder. Your older generations, monetary funds, that's the main way they're giving, right? The younger generations, well, they're more active. They also have less money on hand, but they're really passionate about activism and being a part of things. So you can see here, like my generation, 24%. That's pretty good for being a part of, active campaigns, volunteering. Word of mouth, I mean, look at that. That's crazy. That's awesome. I thought my grandma was chatty. These kids are talking, so they're communicating constantly, and that's a lot to do with the increase in social media and just the ease of talking with people. You don't have to dial the phone as much, so that's huge. So how do we turn this into something that we can target all of these at once, right? And the easiest cross between is peer-to-peer, because if you think about it, it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship, right? You have the people that are going to do the event and the sponsors, the people that want to use monetary funds to support someone that's going to do an activity that's going to, be impactful in some way. So that's really cool. Peer-to-peer kind of brings them all together, gives them their feel-good moment, however they're participating in the events. So that's really important to consider. All right, so for your websites, donor due diligence is vital. People want to get to your website and see where their money is going. I can speak to that personally. I don't really like the idea of I think UNICEF is maybe 5%, maybe 5 cents on the dollar gets to the actual kids. That irks me, and it causes hesitancy to give to something where it's all going to overhead. So keep that in mind. You want it to be at the forefront and accessible to these people because they're concerned about it. So if they can't find it, they're going to be like, "Ugh, should I really give? I don't know where exactly that money's going." So make sure you're being honest with your donors. Let's jump to the next one. All right, so here, kind of like I was just saying, personal responsibility, financial stewardship. Those are the main ones. They're high across all generations. Doesn't matter how old you are. You want to know your money is going to something useful and good. But you start to see a huge change in how they kind of perceive their donations, how they approach helping out your organization. You can see the planning side, and I speak to this for millennials. It's just spontaneous. It's like, whatever, man. If that's the latest thing on my Facebook post, boom, that's what I give to. So we're not too strategic about how we're going to plan out our monthly giving and stuff like that. We're more like, wow, that story was awesome. You know what? Here you go. Here's $50. So as a marketing kind of approach, you kind of have to start thinking, wow, when do I engage with them? How many times am I posting? How many times am I emailing them? Is it too much? Because now you have to consider information overload, right? So as you can see here, activism and advocacy. What kind of events are you running? You want them to be an active part of it. It's kind of high across the board, but obviously the Gen Zers, they really want to change the world. That's awesome. Recognition. Okay, so that gold star Kim gave you, she gave one to me a year ago, and it still sits on my desk. As a millennial, I love to be recognized for my good work, for what I've done. Funny story, I think I gave to the Tim Tebow Foundation a long time ago. And it was really cool. The donation process was smooth. The thank you page was awesome. Made me feel so good. There was pictures of children in the orphanage. And then they followed up with an email. I felt like I was a part of the whole program. They gave me a T-shirt. Pretty soon I had that T-shirt on, and I was like, yeah, that's right. I only gave $20, but man, I was a part. And so that's something to just be mindful of as we are approaching these new generations. They want to be recognized. They want to be thanked. Even though they're giving lousy amounts of money, these people are important because someday they might, like we talked about that donor, income gap, right? Someday they might be making a lot of money, and you're going to want them to have retained them as a donor. So recognize them. Make sure you put a lot of work into that thank you letter, and yeah, we'll be there for you when you need us. Okay. Let's get to the next one, donation channels. So this is kind of interesting. Your website, hugely important. Make sure that thing is mobile compliant too, because if people can't donate on mobile, you're going to miss out on about 21% of donations. people donate with their phones. And your website is by far the main platform all generations are pretty much accessing your donation page. Email, surprisingly, is going down, and that's kind of concerning. So we're starting to look at social media as being the new up-and-coming way to raise funds. But right now, like we were saying, the generations you're targeting, it's baby boomers and Gen Xers. They're still using email, and it's for like important correspondence. We check it, right? So that's still going to be a high open rate on those asks and stuff you send out. Social media, we only have about 10 years of data for that, so it's kind of iffy, but it is showing that it's climbing up. I will speak to Facebook. Let's say in the marketing sector, Facebook's awesome. You can target certain groups of people based on what pages they've liked, have they donated to other nonprofits, like super useful for being really focused in getting those donors. But your Facebook ad is right next to my grandma's knitting posts or my mom cooking up some, taco soup. So it's like, it's kind of mixed. Sometimes it will speak to us and we'll take the time to actually click on those posts and maybe read about it, but it's not as personal. Like your website is all about you. It's all about what actions you're taking, the current events. So as a millennial, I prefer going to the website, really know what's going on. The future generation, maybe Facebook and other social media is going to be the main way they see anything about you, and they're not going to waste their time going to the website. I hope that's not the case, because I think websites are awesome. But anyway, so SMS, I don't recommend this. I think stay away, because I get like a donation text like, help us out, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this is spam, I just freak out. I was like, no one should have my phone number. And as you can see, it's not very statistically great for making asks. So not something I would really push too hard, but you do see some people give through SMS, probably more so during hurricane relief and stuff like that, big events. So, all right, let's see. Yes? I do not. That is good though, because that is a huge platform. More and more people tend to use YouTube now, and I'm like, what's on YouTube? It's just videos, but it's actually now it's a huge streaming service, and more people communicate on YouTube. I do think that's an up-and-coming platform. I'm sorry, I don't have any stats on that off the top of my head. But yeah, I will say Twitter is growing the fastest. It's huge. A lot of younger generation people are kind of moving away from Facebook. It's kind of dying off. It's like, that's where all your parents are. And if you really want to, talk with your friends and not have them spying on everything, go to Twitter or Instagram and stuff like that. So something to consider as well. Okay, so other emerging trends, you don't want to miss out on don't just focus on the new and up and coming generation, right? Remember those older generations, baby boomers and greatest gen. Because as you consider like your registration flow or donation flow for your pages, you want it to make it easy. You don't want to make it too modern and flashy, and then they have a hard time like navigating. So you want to make sure that you're kind of addressing all generations as you consider that flow. Like I mentioned earlier, we want a younger generation. We want to see the impact of our donation. We want that thank you letter. We want to know that even though it was like $10 or $20, that, hey, it's actually important to you. So don't skimp out on reaching out to those people and trying to build a relationship, even if they're young and seem immature and lazy like millennials, but they're important as well. Like I said, 21% of all online donations are on a mobile device, so really important, make sure those pages are good on mobile. And SMS is less effective. And lastly, 30 to 50% of millennials, Gen Xers, and boomers have participated in some form of workplace giving. So having an employer match your gift, huge. People like that, and a lot of people participate in that. So make sure that might be available on your forms. And with that, I'm going to transition to Kim, and she's going to talk about peer-to-peer and communication in that.
Excellent. Okay. So along the lines of, let's go to the next slide. There we go. This communication and communication channels and how to reach people. So, we talked a little bit about the different ways people are, giving and how they're interacting with the different media. So it is still important to communicate frequently, though, and that's the kind of the message here, is that the marketing rule of 7, if you don't know what that is, it states that a person needs to interact with your brand or hear about your message or hear about your mission or see your logo or whatever at least 7 times before they develop a preference for it. And the psychology of this dates back, they started this concept or, started researching this in the 30s with movie producers talking about, how do we advertise our new movies? And of course, back then it was radio or newspapers. But now with all the different channels, it's still, the psychology of it is still relevant today, and it's called the mere exposure effect. So when people just keep hearing about your brand over and over and over again, they start to develop a preference for it. So that's why it's crucial to have a strategy to cut through this communication clutter. That in the previous session where he was talking about a welcome series, and that is so important. People don't, I think you sort of don't realize how important it is to actually, once someone has taken one action with your mission, with your organization, to keep reinforcing, like, thank you, this is great, welcome. Be part of our family and, welcome them in. And, whether it's an email strategy, which, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's twice a month that you're sending out a newsletter or notifications, or your social media strategy that you're constantly evolving, and trying to involve the different generations. It's important to actually, have that strategy in place and follow it over time with those impactful images and impactful content and mission messaging and all the things that, all the things you want them to know about you. And, whether it's YouTube videos that you can really show, how you're helping people or what the outcome is. So outcome is very important to the younger generations. And so, really driving home that message of, what you are actually accomplishing or the outcome or how they're changing the world or how this affects more of a global, impact of not just, like, okay, using Big Brothers Big Sisters as an example, you're changing the life of this one child, but really you're changing society by helping more children be, grow up to be successful and be contributing members of society. So kind of, pulling it back a little bit from the micro view and looking at the macro view. And then, keeping pace with new outlets and testing and adapting and, doing a lot of A/B testing like we were talking about in that other session. There's a lot of really good stuff out there to do. A lot of it you can do on the Engaging Networks platform. So, they have the tools for the A/B testing and the conditional content and all that great stuff. And the other key about an email strategy is, especially for millennials and probably, Gen Z as well, growing up with technology and with screens, they're even more, most of us are visual learners anyway, but they're even more visual. So, having that visually impactful either, photos or video is important. And then also subject lines. I don't know if you've ever gotten a text message from, actually for an email from a millennial that like the entire email was in the subject line. And then you're like, you click into it, you're like, oh, that was it, that was the email. And so a lot of that has to do with, that kind of, the interaction with text messaging, that everything is, just right there. There isn't like a separation between subject line and body. It's just all in one place. So subject lines really matter in open rates, and especially with the younger generations. So as you're testing and adapting and evolving your strategy, also test like, the little emoticons that you can put in subject lines now, and all the little things you can do that maybe you're like, oh, that's silly. Like I'm not going to put an emoji in my subject line, but actually it gets more opens. So it's funny how how that happens over time. And again, it's all about trying to find them where they are and see where people are interacting with you. So looking at peer-to-peer. Okay, so there's a couple, this is an example of a Bowl for Kids' Sake peer-to-peer site. Oops, that was like a spontaneous, oh, I think I know why. I think there was an animation set up there. Anyway, using a good platform for peer-to-peer is key, right? So, you need to have a mobile responsive, really good template, engaging, mobile, easy to navigate through, like that, like Jake was saying before, everything's got to be, right in its place, and you got to move through the process easily, because otherwise you lose people, and that goes, for any generation. And then also giving them the tools. So this is like a fundraiser dashboard sample, giving them the tools to fundraise, to connect with their, their parents or their, their friends or whoever on whatever platform they're involved with. And this is a computer screenshot, but if I had a mobile screenshot, it would also include the SMS text. And so, while we're still kind of like, SMS texting isn't great maybe for getting donations from you as an organization out into the world, maybe it's good for me asking my friends to donate, right? Because it's coming from me to them. So, some of these things, when we look at these statistics from the last couple slides, and they're put together by this Blackbaud study, and they're current, they're 2018. So they're great statistics. But sometimes I wonder, are they not, are some of these things not working well or declining because they don't work, or because we're not implementing them well, or because we're not using them the right way? So I was just kind of a little bit of healthy dose of skepticism when it comes to data that, I'm not totally set on that one thing works over another. I think you just have to keep testing and keep trying to evolve your strategy. And so with the communication piece for peer-to-peer fundraising in particular, you actually need to ask them to fundraise. And I know this seems kind of like, well, yeah, duh, it's a fundraiser, and they signed up to do a fundraiser. But actually, 50% of $0 fundraisers say the reason they didn't do any fundraising because they were never asked to fundraise. So, it's worth making the ask and then make it again, because if they halfway through, they've been signed up for 3 months and they still haven't done any fundraising, ask them again, or maybe provide them tips on how to fundraise, or that kind of that nurturing and that coaching and monitoring of what people are doing and how they're doing and helping them along. That's really the key to success in a peer-to-peer fundraiser. It is actually quite can be quite labor intensive, especially to nurture first year participants. The other thing is that again, we've talked about mission messaging and, impactful storytelling and this kind of thing. It's even more impactful coming, from me to my friend, right? So if I am doing, if I'm participating in a Bowl for Kids' Sake for Big Brothers Big Sisters, I'm going to share that, I've been a Big Sister for 10 years and I'm on the local board, and, will you please support this mission? I'm really passionate about it. So, people including their story onto their fundraising pages is also a key component in really, spreading the message and getting more supporters just aware of your mission, number one, and then also involved in possibly donating. And then the cool thing about peer-to-peer fundraising is this cross-generational appeal, right, that we talked about before in the data, that the younger generations are doing the fundraising, right, participating in the walk, doing the run, doing the marathon, doing the cycle, and then getting the older generations involved in donating and helping them make it successful. And then also, I would argue that it's important to try to find ways to bring in the younger generations. So maybe if your event never included kids before, maybe expand it to be family friendly, or something where you're getting the younger generations involved in, being aware of that concept of personal responsibility. And like, oh, it's not just about me and my, my little world here. Let me look around and see how I can help globally. So that's just sort of a stat here that participants who send emails and use the tools given to them raise more. I think that's pretty straightforward, but getting them to use the tools is the key, doing that nurturing and asking them. So, one way to do that is to use the Engaging Networks marketing automation, because now you can take those, this sort of fairly labor-intensive process of trying to monitor and engage and nurture and, get people involved and communicating with them frequently. Now you can automate it through the series, and, you can send them, one track is the active versus the inactive, or the $0 versus people who've reached 50% of their goal, or, however you want to set up your automation flow. But now you've actually got a way to do that without having to, manually send every single one of those emails and put them on the calendar and that sort of thing. And then that stewardship or that nurturing goes one step further when you are asked, when they've reached their goals, and when you can say, oh yes, congratulations, you've reached your goals. Hey, would you be interested in raising your fundraising goal, because you already met it and there's still a month. There's things you can do if you feel comfortable doing that to kick that up a notch. And then with the small amounts, so peer-to-peer fundraising, obviously you would love it if large corporations came in and gave large amounts of money, but the concept of peer-to-peer fundraising is the friends asking friends, is the small amounts. So, celebrating those small amounts is also really important, and especially to the younger generations who need a little bit more of that, awards and encouragement and acknowledgement. Really give out a lot of those accolades. They work. Even for my generation, it still works. It's still a good thing. Everybody likes a little pat on the back. So another thing in peer-to-peer fundraising that can be really effective is that sense of competition, right? So, and we talked a little bit about the Gen X and the Millennials participating more in workplace, whatever mission or whatever organization that their employer has decided they're going to support. More and more of the younger generation are participating in that workplace giving, whether it's donating or volunteering or whatever. So perhaps this is a place to find them where they are, right? So finding those people through the workplace. Maybe they're not getting to you just by your website or by your email marketing, but if you develop that partnership with that local company and they pull in their employees, then that's another way to pull people in. And competition can be a great way to do that, because maybe you have a bank that you say, hey, if you'll have two teams that compete against each other, we'll give the winning team a prize. Or maybe you ask two different companies, like two banks or two coffee shops or whatever, to kind of have a little bit of friendly rivalry and compete against each other and this sort of thing, and then give them the tools, the rankings and the leaderboards and that sort of thing on your site to have some fun with that, and everybody sees where they are, and the competition will actually cause your events to be more successful and raise more money, because people do like to win. Give them something to win besides just like, I fundraised. So, and then my last slide here on peer-to-peer fundraising and kind of this overall, like, how do we communicate with people, or how do we make these events successful? That post-event analysis is really key. So, making sure that you're doing it right after the event while everything's still fresh in your mind, sending out surveys, polling people, asking them, maybe talk to your team captains or your board members, or, whoever your champions are that are really involved in the event. Ask them for their feedback about what they liked and what worked for them, where you should be next year. Should we spend more time on Instagram, or should we do more with, video or whatever, and see if you can get them to give you that feedback of, how to evolve your event. And then that, that off-season outreach, like, kind of the theme of the day, like that retention, that nurturing, that, keeping in touch with people and making sure that they're, still aware that you're still around and that we want you back next year is really key. And then I'll skip those two. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. But diversifying is an interesting concept because, again, we're now, we're talking about, okay, how do we find the people where they are? Where are the younger generations? What are they doing? And a lot of them are doing DIY campaigns or, doing their own little crowdfunding or a birthday campaign or, basically anything that anyone can dream up and make into a fundraiser, you pretty much can support, right? So if on the Engaging Networks platform, there's the event, there's the event templates, and then there's also the DIY templates. So you can pretty much support anything that people want to do. And so, ask them what they want to do, or throw some ideas out there, or look and see what they're posting on their Facebook and Instagram, because maybe they're already doing something like that for another mission, and you can be like, oh, we could do that. So. Anyway, so along those lines of DIY and crowdfunding, I'm going to turn it back over to Jake to talk a little more about crowdfunding, because it is kind of an up-and-coming thing, I think.
Hey, so really quickly, just before I get into crowdfunding, YouTube. So some interesting stuff, like 28% of nonprofits are on YouTube, so keep that in mind. Definitely get present on there. And then 57% of people who watch nonprofit videos go on to make a donation. So over half. So if you have a good, media team that can make some videos, get those videos on there, and yeah, that's a pretty cool statistic. So yeah, I bet there's more stats out there, but that's what I found in a couple minutes. All right. So quick poll, crowdfunding. Who here has started a crowdfund or has been a part of one? Couple people. Awesome. Were they successful? Like, what was your overall experience with those? Was it?
It was Kickstarter.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah, Kickstarter.
I got what I paid for.
Hey, that's awesome. That's good. Successful. How about you?
I think
Did you give to one or?
I gave to one.
You gave to one? Did it meet its goal?
Yeah, Ben asked me to give to one. Get something. And money,
Awesome. Yeah. So crowdfunding is awesome, and it's really a up and coming thing. We've seen a huge growth in like the last 5 years. Like for millennials, activity in crowdfunding has increased from 10% to 47%. Like we really like crowdfunding, and it's kind of interesting because it's like a cross between a normal donation page to an organization and peer-to-peer, because it's tangible, right? There's something being built. Your money's going towards something that we can fiscally put our minds to. That hey, our money is going to amount to this thing. So it's pretty awesome because everyone's a part of it. It's kind of cooperative. So this is something that I think as
schools use it too. Now I'm thinking about it. Teachers will do like a lot of
yeah,
GoFundMe stuff.
exactly. Yeah, GoFundMe is the big site, and it's pretty cool. I think some other stats on this as far as the other generations, so like Gen X, which is one of our target generations, right? That's from 10 to 36%. So this is all within 5 years. So creating a campaign that's like on a GoFundMe, awesome. I think you'll see a lot of positive results from that. Okay, so just going through our key takeaways from this presentation. We want to focus on those two main generations, right? Baby boomers for the next 5 years, Gen X are about 10 years away from their prime. So kind of keep that at the forefront of your mind as you're developing your newsletters and different things. These are the people you're speaking to the most. But then keep in mind that those relationships with millennials really matter, right? Don't forget about us. We want your attention. We want to be recognized. So, sit down, have a coffee with us. Let us know that you care about our small donations right now. All right, and then get serious about retention, right? So that due diligence on your website, it matters. So make sure that is present. Yeah, other than that, I think most people will be happy to know that their money is going to something, good and not just someone's bills. So, okay, workplace partnership programs. I know I didn't talk too much about that, but just as far as having an employer match your gift, that's huge. So if you can set those up, those are very viable and useful. New technology that's coming out, don't resist the change, right? It's always evolving. There's going to be probably new social media, I would imagine, in the near future. Catch on to those trends. Those fads are important, especially if this new and upcoming generation, right? They're switching platforms pretty fast. Like, I remember when it was like, what was it, Snapchat? That was huge. But then, you know, it started changing and they're like, boom, to another one. So keep track of what's going on. Just stay up to date and make that available on your websites. And don't forget to test, make sure it works. I think I had something else there for that, but anyways. And lastly, listen to your donors, okay? So if someone's, I see this in support all the time, and it's cross-generational. Sometimes it's a little bit different, like an older generation person will be like, hey, I had a really hard time at this point in the registration flow. Or a young person's like, man, I couldn't upload my 1,000 contacts, you know, very different problems. But overall, if you hear back that they had a problem donating, they had a problem registering, that's not good, and you really want to hone in on any kind of feedback you hear and jump on that. And lastly, when I say listen to what, you know, they care about, you really want to find out what maybe is like current, you know, activism in general. Like, what are they passionate about? What is the younger generation really worried about? Well, you know, climate change is a big one, you know, and how can you use those things in your newsletters and your events to kind of, you know, incorporate the things they care about. So with that, we go to questions. I know we had one about YouTube. Any others? Yeah.
Struggle with about promoting peer-to-peer is sometimes that, yes, we're going to make money, but we don't know these people, or maybe they're just giving because they like Susie and not really our organization.
Their motives?
Is there, well, do you guys have any ideas or strategies for capturing those people? Like, how do we make those people part of our organization? How do we make them feel valued and show them how great we are and what the money's really doing for the organization, so that maybe they'll actually become real donors, so we know who they are and can communicate with them.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to that?
So a couple questions. What platform are you using for your peer-to-peer? Engaging networks. Okay. And so, are these offline donors that you're not actually capturing their email address and that sort of thing? Or, because I would think if they're online donors, then you've got their email address.
I guess that's true. We treat them differently because we feel like they are just giving to the
It's grandma giving to little Susie, and
We don't
yeah.
want to put them in our regular welcome series, and we don't want to start sending them normal information, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they didn't donate to PETA, they donated to Susie.
Right.
They knew they were donating to PETA.
You can still read about.
Yeah, but
especially on a confirmation page, though, you can ask them to opt in, or you can ask them if they would like to receive information, if you can then use their information as part of their donation. A lot of organizations do have some kind of confirmation page.
So you're saying just ask them if they want to be opted in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe you set up a different welcome series for them.
I was gonna say, give them a separate welcome.
That's smart.
See
Yeah.
how they respond to, like, you have all these different types of peer-to-peers, so you would already know what that interest is, and then you can run it with
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned peer-to-peer texting, and we do what's technically peer-to-peer texting through Hustle.
Uh-huh.
But are you talking about actual peer-to-peer texting with, people texting a link to their friends? And have you seen clients do that
Well,
successfully?
so in our peer-to-peer module, we now have SMS, which is awesome. And Kim made a great point. Like, if it's coming from someone I know, I trust that, and that's a text that I would jump on. So I definitely utilize that, and I think that's where you're going to see that successful, like 8% kind of donations. as far as coming from the organization itself, just to your, donor database, it gets kind of weird there. What do you think, Kim?
I've had some success with it.
Have you?
Yeah, but
You might have more stats than we do.
generation though,
Yeah,
that would be interesting to see. how
that would be.
coming in.
I feel like, for SMS, probably your best bet is to target by date of birth and maybe anybody before after 1970. Yeah, because otherwise, I know like my grandparents, they probably would complain to me about, yes, we got spam today. If they even check SMS, yeah, so.
With the platform, people can send a text that has just a simple link, or is it like a graphic that?
Yeah, it's a little SMS graphic, right in the peer-to-peer. They have like the Gmail icon and all the icons, and then it's like green. What does it look like?
Yeah, well, and so there's a little, there's like the little orange button that says SMS
Oh, yeah, it's
in
orange.
mobile. When they click it, they put in the contact information, and then there's a pre-populated message that you can set as a default, or that the participant can change it, and then it includes a link to their fundraising page.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really great. Any other questions, guys? All right. Well, that pretty much wraps. We're right on time. Yeah,
Yay.
thank you, everyone.
Nailed it.
Yeah, right.
Good job. That was so millennial of you to Google the YouTube stuff during the presentation. I love it.
Right? Wow. Look at that.